Employees look down at me, not knowing my family owns the company. I am 22 years old and just graduated fresh from college. Before I started applying for different companies, my parents made it clear that I was going to work for their company and hopefully run it in the future when they retire. My parents own a huge waste management service company and have become really successful. My parents decided that I needed to learn about the family business from the ground up, which meant that I had to do a lot of dirty work. My dad gave me different tasks throughout the week. Some days, I was with the crew on the trucks rolling out to collect bins from all over the city. Other days, I was at the recycling center, learning how they sort materials and see what happens next. I grew to appreciate the workers there and admired them. The people I worked with didn't know who I was, and I had no plan of telling them. I wanted them to treat me without any special treatment and wanted to experience everything from scratch. Everything went well the first few weeks until I started getting treated like a complete outsider. I found myself doing most of the work throughout the day, and sometimes other employees would tell me to make sure the bins were lined up straight. I didn't mind the work, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't getting a little aggravated for doing their jobs. I did this throughout the months until my breaking point came on a rainy day. That day, we were short-staffed and the workload was heavy. I couldn't sleep that night and came to work already tired. Not to mention that I ended up getting drenched and started getting fed up with being treated as the company's pack mule. When we started wrapping up, one of the senior workers, Ron, threw his share of the remaining tasks at me. He told me that he had to leave early and that I should handle it because I was new at the job and he was my senior. I got fed up with it and told him that I wouldn't do it and that he should do it himself. He looked at me confused and like I disrespected him. He smirked at me and told me that management was not going to like it if they heard him saying bad things about my work. I looked at him and told him to go to management because I didn't care. I even told him that I would go to management with him if he wanted. Part 2. Ron looked at me surprised. He proceeded to call me rude and cocky, and he told me to come with him. I followed him where he led me to one of the higher-ups of the company. That person was his close friend at work, and of course, I knew he was going to be biased. He began complaining to him about how I didn't want to work and how he was upset that everyone was working while I wasn't. The person who he was complaining to looked at me and asked me for my name. I told him my first name, and he proceeded to ask me if what Ron was saying was true. I told him that I was picking up everybody's dirty work and that it was unfair. Just because I was the new guy didn't mean that everyone else didn't have to work. Ron cut me off and started acting like the victim, saying that everyone was doing my work and I was just there because I wanted to cause problems. The higher-up proceeded to ask me how I got hired, to which I angrily replied that I got hired through a family member. He asked me which family member hired me, and I replied, my father's name. Both of them looked surprised, and I cut them off and told them to keep up their energy once they both get fired. I walked off and went home. Afterwards, I was fed up with everything that day and ended up calming myself down. I wondered if I had gone overboard. My father made a phone call that day where he proceeded to ask me how I was doing at the company. I hesitated before answering, but I wanted to be honest with him. I told him what happened, and there was a silence. Afterwards, my father proceeded to say that he was disappointed to hear about my situation, but was also disappointed about my reaction. He told me that he understood that I was frustrated, but threats and walking away wouldn't solve anything. He told me that it was very unprofessional of me, and it is something I need to learn how to handle when I take over. He was right. I do admit my anger clouded my judgment, but I was just stressed. My father said he would arrange a meeting between the three of us the next day. All of us went to my father's office, in which he stressed the importance of resolving work conflicts and unfair treatment to employees because of position. My father continued to tell Ron and his friend that this was just a warning, but the next time something similar happens, they will both be released. The meeting was tense, but I knew it was needed. I apologized for my threats, and they apologized for treating me unfairly. The next few months were fine, since everybody found out I was the boss's son. Everyone has tried to do my work and act fake around me. Now, every time I would pick up a garbage bin, someone would step in and tell me that they got it. It's a shame because when no one knows who you are, you get treated like a dog. But when people do know who you are, you get treated like a prince when you just want to work and be treated fairly.